Today on Locked On Rockies, we continue to go around the diamond and look at the state of the positions. We are remaining in the infield and we end up at second base, a position full of promise that's already been fulfilled. And I think 2023 is going to be a phenomenal year for Brendan Rodgers. We talk about that and more today on Locked On Rockies.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 22nd day of February. I was about to say November. How did I get November already? Not that fast this year. But the 22nd day of February in the year 2023. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here, is talk about the Colorado Rockies each and every single day here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies. You'll be taken to where you need to go. We have our episodes recorded live first and foremost on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. So if you head over to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, you will be able to ask your questions, be part of the show, be part of the chat, just like Alex Jimenez, Mateo Spalite, and Lux Ace are right now here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Today on Locked On Rockies, we are talking about second base. Before we do that, got to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. You can make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. And folks, the state of the position, this one might not have as much what ifs associated with it, other than I think a big question that we've kind of addressed a little bit as well, of trading Brendan Rodgers. But I want to get out and past that and make this abundantly clear. Brendan Rodgers would be the next jersey I buy for the Colorado Rockies. It's either him or Kyle Freeland at this point. I'm getting to the point where I need to get another jersey. I can't keep just wearing Nolan Arenado. I pointed to the wrong thing, I know. But I can't keep wearing the Nolan Arenado jersey. I'm going to keep it, of course. I still, it's something to keep for sure. But it's time for me to get a jersey for the Rockies. And unfortunately, I can't get a Brendan Rodgers jersey because I don't know what the team is going to do with Brendan Rodgers. And that's the issue. We have a lot of what ifs going on with the Rockies right now. And some might point to Rodgers, the beginning of Rodgers' season last year, as a warning sign, and maybe some of the other things. But Brendan Rodgers is legit, folks. Brendan Rodgers is the guy. Brendan Rodgers is a stud. Brendan Rodgers is the best overall player on the Colorado Rockies. I think he is going to be by far the best player on the Rockies. I think he's going to be the all-star representative for the Rockies. I don't think we see an early season slump. It might take a little bit to ratchet up and get things going, but Brendan Rodgers and his path through the last season and his season prior demonstrate that Rodgers is an elite level second baseman. Why is he elite? Because he's an incredible defensive asset. And we know how great second base play can be. The Rockies undervalued second base and undervalued their last great second baseman in DJ LeMahieu. And, well, I mean, Brian McMahon, I guess, flirted with second base. So maybe not so much, but still, their last third base or second baseman that they really stuck with and said, you are the second baseman for a bit. Brendan Rodgers has a little bit more than I think DJ LeMahieu, in the fact of he might not be able to make as many insane jumping catches and the height of DJ LeMahieu, but Brendan Rodgers on offense is a threat. It is a player that has the ability to hit for power. He can hit for contact. He gets on base, and he went from being abysmal to great instead of the usual Rockies trend of great to abysmal or great to mediocre or cooling off. Instead of falling off throughout the season, Rodgers got better. That is a quality in a player you got to enjoy and you got to love, because it is something that, folks, Brendan Rodgers was hitting sub 100. The dude finished batting .266 with an OBP of 325, a slugging of 408, and an OPS of 733 with 13 homers in that time, 63 RBIs, and 140 hits, a 4.3 WAR. He was already statistically one of the best, if not the best, players on the Rockies last year anyway. And this is even on top of the fact that he just played Gold Glove caliber defense. I mean, the Rockies are spoiled with incredible defensive abilities, and I see Luxay saying, how is he the best overall player, and mentioning Chris Bryant as well, but Chris Bryant ain't gonna win the Gold Glove. Brendan Rodgers could repeat, and Brendan Rodgers is going to save games. Brendan Rodgers is going to turn massive double plays. We might be seeing the new infield of Rodgers and Tovar. I mean, that's exactly what you're hoping for. That's your next pair. That's your next combo. That's your next right up the gut elite defense. If the Rockies stick with Brendan Rodgers and Ezekiel Tovar's defense is as good as it's supposed to be, the Rockies are back to elite defense up the middle with a Gold Glover on third. The Rockies have the potential of having an incredible defense in the infield yet again. And that is a good thing. And no one realizes that. No one realizes that the Rockies have I don't think people realize when they're talking about all the nightmares and all the stuff on the Rockies, when they're not really thinking about it. The Rockies had a Gold Glove finalist at third and a Gold Glover at second, plus good enough defense and the next coming of what should be the next great thing on first base in Michael Toglia. CJ Cron's going to play a fine enough first base. We know that. On top of Ezekiel Tovar, your huge prospect, the one you're most excited about, headlined by his defense. So this is an incredibly the infield potential here of at least on the defensive side is great. The Rockies turned a lot of double plays already last year. Now they should be able to make that the standard. The Rockies, especially if that's a good thing, that makes Kyle Freeland better. When you have Gold Glovers in your infield, especially in the middle of your infield has a Gold Glover and a player that has the defensive capabilities and the power or the abilities of Brendan Rodgers, it makes pitchers like Kyle Freeland better. It actually allows the Rockies' philosophy of pitching to contact for some stuff and weak contact to be better because you have elite defense behind you. One reason why, a big reason why the Rockies pitching staff and why the Rockies were able to get to the playoffs back in the day was because they were so good at infield defense. Weak contact. Arenado was there. Story was there. LeMahieu was there. First, they were doing whatever at first base. They were catching the ball more often than not. But that's my point. Brendan Rodgers is incredibly valuable because he has the tools. He has everything you need, and he's demonstrated it through 2 seasons, including bouncing back from what could be a season killer. You have a start like Brendan Rodgers did last year, your season can bounce back a little bit, but not nearly to the point where you become one of your team's most effective and efficient offensive pieces. That's how big and that's how important the swing was for Brendan Rodgers. And in the season prior to that, in 2021 with the Rockies, Brendan Rodgers batted .284 with an OBP of 328, a slugging of 470, an OPS of 798, and an OPS plus of 102. In that time, he had 51 RBIs, 15 home runs, three triples, 21 doubles, and 110 hits. In about 100 and roughly 150 less at-bats than he had this in 2022. It's not outrageous to sit here and think that if Rodgers can get in a power stroke that he can hit 20 home runs this year. I don't think that's him. That's the seal like of excellence. And if Brendan Rodgers is out there hitting 20 home runs for you, that means Rodgers is coming up in certain situations with the Rockies having in the beginning of their order where the Rockies are going to get a 2-run home run off the bat. The Rockies are going to be, Brendan Rodgers gives you the ability to get up in games early and then back it up. Brendan Rodgers sets the tone for the Colorado Rockies, and he sets the tone of good play. The Rockies were a sloppy team on defense last year. I mean, they still, it's crazy that the fact that they were still recognized as this, considering how bad the Rockies were on defense. But players like Brendan Rodgers set the record straight because he sets the standard. The standard for the prospects as well, for them to flourish, is to look at Brendan Rodgers. He's the exact type of player that these prospects have to mimic. Highly touted prospect, lots going on, maybe some struggles when you first coming up, issues with playing time, but it's been amazing. Ever since the Rockies have just played Brendan Rodgers, they have been better at second base. There's no question about it. Brendan Rodgers is the best player on the Colorado Rockies. And this is why they should not trade Brendan Rodgers. I'll explain why coming up here in segment number 2. I'll also take a look at the live chat as well. But before I do that, got to let you know about our friends at FanDuel. The midway point of the NBA season is here, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if you don't win. Let's head on over to FanDuel.com and see what's going on the old sports book. And if you want to get that no sweat first bet, you can head to FanDuel.com/locked-on. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on for that no sweat first bet for up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Hey, maybe you want to parlay some stuff and make a little bit extra cheddar. You can do that with the same game parlays from the FanDuel Sportsbook. Let's take a look here at some of the lines. See what's going on in the world of sports betting. All right, here. I'm trying to see what Colorado teams might be going on, but on a quick glance, I'm not seeing anything. So why not head over? Let's see what the Rockies are looking at here. The division odds for the Colorado Rockies or actually, let's see there. What we got? World Series odds here. Nope, they got worse. It's plus 30,000 now for the Rockies as opposed to plus 20,000 before. You want to take a stab in the dark, or if you want to take a gamble on some of these other teams, you can check out the Astros at plus 600, Dodgers plus 750, Yankees plus 800. Who do you think is going to take home the World Series? You can bet on that future bet and a whole lot more at the FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel.com/locked-on for that no sweat first bet. FanDuel makes every moment more, and they are an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. We also stream all of our episodes live, and you can be part of the bustling Locked On Rockies live chat. We got lots of people here. Lots to catch up on here. But for your second listen of the day, why don't you check out the Locked On MLB Prospect Show and stay up to date with all things going on in the world of MLB farm systems. You can also check out the Locked On Nuggets, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Broncos, and the Locked On Buffs podcasts as well if you need more Colorado sports action. Let's see. Lux Ace is glad we got to see Rodgers do good last season, but he still needs to hit a little better. And I think he is going to hit a little bit better. Alex Jimenez says, I always got my Cargo and Tulo jerseys, need a McMahon and Rodgers jersey, and eventually Tovar midseason. Yeah, man. The thing is, I might go vintage. I might go classic too. Like, until the Rockies with some of these, like, a Cargo jersey would be sick, honestly. That might pull. The Cargo might be next. Got the Chuck Nasty with the purple and the City Connect from Lux Ace. Y'all are got the serious jerseys now. Brandon Kramer says, dude, it's not cool how much you pump me up and give me hope. I think I want to just kind of, there is stuff to be hopeful for. It has to pan out still, you know? things still have to work out, and the performance has to be there, and the consistency. The biggest thing, and this goes for Brendan Rodgers too, is consistency. Rodgers needs to have a good spring that translate into a good to great year. But I think the trajectory we've seen from Rodgers is that he's consistently good. 2 seasons, we've seen it. And 2 seasons, including that major bounce back. I really don't think we can overemphasize how important Rodgers bouncing back offensively to get to where he finished last season was. He basically had a month of the season that didn't exist because of how bad he was. It was detrimental to him. And he basically replicated his performance with, in after. So he basically kind of had the same type of thing. Minus, you just take out the 150 crappy at bats at the beginning of the season for Rodgers there in 2022. And what does his line look like? Just like, if you wanted to kind of match it in terms of number of at bats with his 2021 season. I know that's kind of a stretch. I'm kind of looking at things, but it kind of puts things into perspective. But just like with with everything, especially Rockies related, consistency is going to be key. Crone is definitely one of our best. We got lots to talk about first base tomorrow. We'll get to that. And Brendan Kramer says, can you imagine having something like Nolan, Trevor, and DJ again and finishing third in the West? Yeah, I can. The defense, on paper, the Rockies should be a great team defensively in the infield. That's a no-brainer. If Tovar is up to what he's projected to be, which there's really, when it comes to defense, he's gonna be able. That's not the thing you worry about with Tovar. It's catching up to MLB pitching and handling situations like that. The Rockies are going to have. I don't think, unfortunately, when you say those names, Nolan and Trevor brought so much more power offensively, and there's not as much power there. But that could change. Who knows? We could see a little bit more, but you have more confidence in Nolan and Trevor, kind of the extra base hits or leaving the yard in that kind of hypothetical as well. I don't think Ryan McMahon got robbed for the Gold Glove. Luxe says Rymack got robbed when we were talking about Gold Glove. He was not as good. I was surprised he was even a finalist. I thought he was better than possible. Honestly, I thought McMahon kind of was upset. All right, so let's talk about trading Brendan Rodgers. This is a real possibility for the Rockies. It really depends on what it kind of shapes out with the Ryan McMahon extension and the amount of prospects and everyone they have. You don't really have necessarily room for everyday playing time for some of your best players and your top prospects. So the Rockies are going to have to make a decision at some point, or they're going to have to get creative and not use those positions. They're going to have to use the outfield, the DH, and first base as ways to get Montero in the game while also keeping Ryan McMahon in there. Like we talked about yesterday, I don't think it's all that unlikely to see McMahon slide over and play a lot of shortstop this year, especially since Tovar's a rookie. There's going to be moments where he is going to be taken out of the game. He might be slumping things. There's X, Y, and Z that can happen with the young guy Ezekiel Tovar, and that's going to free stuff up. Brendan Rodgers doesn't necessarily free up a position for someone if you trade him, however. The thing that makes me worried about a trade is the fact that they could have done more. And I feel like with all the players that they have been extending and all of the moves they are trying to make, it seems a little odd that Brendan Rodgers didn't get the extension offer after these 2 years. And I'm kind of hoping it's a mid-season extension that he agrees to, because I'm not all that certain a player like Brendan Rodgers will return to Colorado once his contract there is up. It's just one of those situations where what does Rodgers, if this team's prospects blossom and bloom and he's going to be part of it, and that's a different story. But the Rockies need to get through this season, and then next year's kind of going to be a prove it moment for at least a bunch of things. And I believe Rodgers with the Rockies are going to have to figure out extension there. They're going to have to do some stuff. I can't remember if he's got another year of arbitration after this one. I haven't looked at Rodgers' contract in full. But there's no one to immediately just like fill in there other than putting Ryan McMahon at second base and going with Montero at third. But the Rockies would be hesitant to get rid of that great defense at third with Ryan McMahon. That's kind of the purpose of why you have him. So why would the Rockies trade Rodgers? To be totally honest, I don't necessarily know. I don't think that's out of the pieces and the things that you can move for the Rockies and the players to keep around. Rodgers should be basically on the short list. I don't think it should be that far out of the question if the Rockies aren't in consideration that the Rockies could look to move on from one of their starting pitchers. The Rockies could look to move on from, again, what is the point of having CJ Cron hit all those home runs for you and be there if he's getting in the way of all your prospects and when he can go help a team and be a DH and play first base for a playoff team, someone that you can get a couple of draft picks, get a draft pick, get some prospects, take some lottery darts, just trade away some stuff that you know you're not going to hang on to for the long term forever. Because right now it's about planning for the future and building around these prospects. And Rodgers is the most logical one to keep around. You have your big vet. You have Bryant's going to be out there, and he's going to be your team's vet for a long time. Rodgers is that perfect type of player to keep there. That he's gone through the process. He's been a top prospect, and he's succeeded at the major league level. He's the exact type of guy to have on your team, especially to be that leader of an infield of players that are trying to do exactly what he's trying to do. I think Rodgers' presence on the Rockies not only helps them be a better team, but it helps the players around him because I think his experience, his story is relatable in the fact of how do you manage these expectations? How do you handle all of these things? And how do you be successful? There's going to be a lot of those players. Those young guys are going to look to Brendan Rodgers this year to talk to him about how did you handle going through the worst stretch in your baseball career? Because he might have had because think about it. There was probably not a moment that Brendan Rodgers has played baseball since he's learned the game and since he's played the game at a competitive level that he struggled as much as he did last year. That presence, that knowledge, that experience in a game like baseball, that stuff matters because you have to go through it. Sometimes there's just no other way but to do that, and Rodgers did and came out the other side on top. In a game and in a world and in a sports environment that's so quick to chew people up and spit them out, especially after one bad stretch, Rodgers is the example that you should be looking for and looking to highlight. Rodgers should be the type of player you want to highlight on your team, and Rodgers is the type of leader that's going to help this team get back to where they want to be. Whether he be the most vocal leader or not, Rodgers is going to leave because that guy went out and played gold glove quality defense and got himself out of a funk while the Rockies were through a massive funk themselves. It is someone exactly like you say, Mateo, lead by example. And that's exactly what Rodgers can do. However, let's play devil's advocate. Let's look on the flip. Rodgers is probably your most enticing piece to move on the Rockies. I think maybe people would think it's some of these prospects or CJ Cron or Ryan McMahon. No one's going to touch Chris Bryant's contract with the 13.5-foot pole. Ryan McMahon easily could be there, but I think Ryan McMahon would be a player that some teams would try to get for cheap. Rodgers is the one you have to sit there and say, no, the kid is in his prime. You're about to be able to sign it. You can sign him to a massive extension. If the Rockies trade Brendan Rodgers, the return has to be solid. And can we trust the Rockies to make such deals with high quality caliber players? I don't know. We haven't seen Bill Schmidt do it. We haven't seen Bill Schmidt necessarily try, but there's really no instances. There's been really one. I mean, the getting Cargo, that's kind of the last big one. But right now and lately, we can't trust the Rockies to make the best deals overall. We're finally getting to a point where we're going to learn. But I'm sorry, the Rockies, the Arenado deal has not panned out. Again, Montero has to be once in a lifetime. And we're going to have, that's the last pill that we have to swallow because you had things to do and you had pieces to move. You had options to really do the trades and they didn't do it. So why would the Rockies now move Rodgers? I mean, they didn't trade Trevor Story. They didn't trade John Gray. They didn't trade Carlos Estevez. I mean, these are all solid players. I mean, all solid players that the Rockies didn't do anything with. So, is there any reason for the Rockies to believe that this is something that that they'll really nail? I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. When we come back, we'll take some more comments from the live chat and lots more, and kind of wrap up and kind of just put the pin on and summarize why Brendan Rodgers is the right guy for second base, why the state of second base is a good thing, and why I think the Rockies are have their next big guy, have the guy that they really want to get behind in Brendan Rodgers, coming up here in segment number 3. Thank you for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming service. All you got to do is search Locked On Rockies. You'll be taken to where you need to go. You can also be part of the live chat here on the Locked On Rockies podcast, just like so many are today. Woo-hoo-hoo! Here, we got lots of people in the live chat today. Alex Jimenez says 7 years, $80 million for Brendan Rodgers. Do you think Rodgers signs for less than 100 given the current market that deals the players signed? He just signed a $2,700 deal for arbitration. Let's see. I could maybe. I don't hate it. I don't hate that at all. That'd be really that'd be an interesting one. I think we will hear Rodgers Rockies extension talks. And if we don't hear them, then we'll raise the alarm for concern heading into the trade deadline. But Rodgers has shown that he has abilities on offense. He is one of the best, crowned the best defender in base at second base, at least in the National League. It's his spot. Rodgers is the guy. If there's a guy for you to tell your friends to watch this year, when people are asking, and when you're, and for your guy, the next guy, it's Brendan Rodgers. Why? Because he balls out on defense. He's got the mullet. You look at Brendan Rodgers, and that's what you're looking for in Rockies baseball, is it not? It's part of why we love Chuck. Big beard, big hair, mullet, the guy's running around. I mean, he's a baller. It's the type of guy that you kind of just look at, and that's the guy you expect to run out of the dugout for the Colorado Rockies. And then you get to pair him with, but your next big thing at shortstop. You got one of your first big things, because remember how big of a prospect Brendan Rodgers was, how big of a deal Brendan Rodgers was. Drafted third overall by the Rockies in 2015. Remember, that's a pretty big deal going up against your next pretty big deal at shortstop. That's the combo. That's why you get excited to watch the Rockies this year. That's why they won't lose 100 games. This is players like Brendan Rodgers are the exact reason why people don't know nothing about the Rockies sometimes. Because they don't know players like Brendan Rodgers exist. Because they don't know, because the Gold Glove things happened and they said, who the heck is that guy? I've never heard of Brendan Rodgers in my life. People will hear about Brendan Rodgers this year. People will know who Brendan Rodgers, people who know ball, people who play baseball, people who follow the game and actually know the game will know Brendan Rodgers. And as I said at the beginning, and as I've said throughout this, Brendan Rodgers will be the Rockies All-Star Game representative this year. At least if the Rockies only have one, he's the guy. I think he can hit 20 home runs this year. I think he can bat in the 270s. I think he can get another sweet Gold Glove patch on his glove, like you were saying, Alex. I think he can do all of that. There's no reason to believe he can't. They're bearing an injury. Second base should be Brendan Rodgers' home and should be where Rodgers stays and where Rodgers plays. Brendan Rodgers should be extended, and Brendan Rodgers should be the starting second baseman and lead the next generation of great Rockies players back to the playoffs with Gold Glove defense, great contact, and a little bit of pop and power mixed in together with another great infield. That's what I like to hear. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I hope the plan is. And folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Holy cow, did we have a live chat today? I got to thank all of you for tuning in. There were so many of you. I just am going to say thank you to all of you for tuning in, and thank you so much for your comments. With all these people, it's going to be hard for me to keep up with them, but I keep wanting to see them because that means we have a ton of fun, and we did today. The state of second base is good for the Rockies. The Rockies are in good hands when it comes to second base, and I can't wait to see what Brendan Rodgers does this year. One of my most anticipated Rockies of the season. Folks, find us wherever you find your podcast, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Thank you so much for making Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day. We are always live on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel as well. Go subscribe there. Be part of the show. And folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.